This episode is brought to you by Fuli Gemstones. Hello, I'm Carol Woolton, the voice of Jewellery. Welcome to If Jewels Could Talk. This is our season finale, the end of season 6, can you believe it? But don't worry, we are not going away for long. We have too many stories to tell, basically, so we have to get on with it. We have to get on with season 7. And as promised, I am going to answer questions today that you've been sending in, and thank you so much for everybody who responded to my shout out of asking for questions about what you wanted answered. So here goes. Question 1 from Alistair in London. What was the one that got away? He wanted to know if there was one piece of jewellery that I saw that I never bought that I really regret. And there is. And I'm going to answer this one first because I don't want to keep thinking about it at the end of this episode and be upset that I never got it. The one that got away was something that I bought from a dealer called Peter Edwards in London. But I didn't buy from Peter Edwards in London, that I saw there. And Peter Edwards was on Conduit Street for years, and all the years I used to run around the corner back to Vogue House when it was in Hanover Square. I used to pop in and see Peter if I had a few minutes. And he is a dealer in the great 20th century greats like Belperon, Boivin, people like that. Increasingly very hard to find. And I learned a lot from Peter and we'd have great chats. I know I've mentioned before that I love that modernist period of sort of 20s, 30s, when it was all about speed and breaking away from the formality of fine jewellery in a new design language set by modernist designers like Jean Desprez. He was an aircraft engineer at the end of the First World War and began making jewellery, and basically they were inspired by everything on the street. Camshafts, gears, propellers, anything that denoted the new speed. And I love that era. And he had a Jean Desprez ring in his signature silver and yellow gold, but unusually with a sparkling aquamarine, because usually Jean Desprez used matte, malachite, lapis, stones like that. Now, it was very unusual to find this work with a sparkling gemstone. And I tried it on, and I used to go back in and try it on every so often. It was £20,000, so you can imagine it was out of my price league. But I loved it, and I used to go in and try it on. And one day it had gone, and I said, Peter, where's the ring gone? And he said, I sold it. I said, oh my God, I can't bear it. I really wanted that ring. And he said, Carol, you could have given me a down payment and paid on the Never Never, given me a little each month. Now, had I known that, I would have put myself in hock for years, and I probably would still be paying it off now. But I didn't know, and I didn't dare ask him because it was a very posh shop. And anyway, it was within my grasp had I done that, and it fitted me like a glove. I know it was meant to be mine, but someone else has it. But it technically, if I ever see it again, it's my ring. So that was question 1. Question 2 is something that actually quite a few people ask me, which is about young designers. How do people get going? People wanted to know about people's businesses and how they got going. And I have to say, one very popular episode that we had this season was Jennifer Meyer speaking to us from Los Angeles. Jennifer Meyer has a very successful business, and she's best friends with Jennifer Aniston, Kate Hudson, the cool girls in Hollywood. But she was in PR, and she just had this longing inside to fulfill her subdued ambition. It was her husband, the actor Tobey Maguire, who said, what do you really want to do? And she said, I really want to be a jewellery designer. And he said, do it. Now, she knew nothing about it. She was working as a PR, and she made a couple of pieces, and she was so green at the business that even when the buyer of Bergdorf's asked to buy one of her pieces, she said, you can't, because I've only got one of them. Anyway, it's very entertaining, and you hear how she built it sort of organically, piece by piece, so do listen to it. But it's very competitive space, so I understand why people want to ask that question. Retail is changing all the time. Very few shops do wholesale. When they do, it's sell or return. That's impossible for young designers to manage with their cash flow. Places like Matches, that was a great online platform, has gone into liquidation. So it's harder and harder. On the good news side, jewellery sales rise year on year. I think they rise about 6% year on year. And, it's just a massive billion-dollar business around the world. So that's the good news. The stats are great. People want to buy jewellery. That should encourage you. Plus, there's always room for something new. Don't feel that you can't join any industry, whether it's the jewellery, fashion, wherever it is. There's always room for new ideas and a new point of view. So don't let it put you off. However, number one of my top tips, and the 10 top tips, would be come up with something original. You need to offer something unique, something that will stand out from the competitors. So make sure you have that. Do a business course if you can, or find a business partner to work with who can tell you all about that. Write down your business goals, your mission statement, outlining who your customer should be, who you want your customer to be. That will help you focus your design and your marketing towards that customer. Cash flow. Work out your cash flow and how much you need to keep the business going. Don't overspend. You need to be able to buy raw materials. You need to be able to pay your rent. You may need to pay someone's salary. So have that cash flow organized. Packaging is part of your brand image. That's important. That also captures people's interest. And it should be something that works naturally with your profile and your brand. Have a name that's catchy, that reflects your style and brand and resonates with other languages in other markets. And I think you need a logo that stands out. I think the first thing I did with If Jewels Could Talk was create, I think, quite a show-stopping logo. So when people are swiping through and looking at the myriad of podcasts there are there to choose from, mine might stand out. PR. Don't overspend on PR is my advice right now. If you know people, try and sort of network yourself. Try and meet people, ask people, use friends, contacts. If you do take on a PR, make sure you're getting good value for money. I have to say, when I put pieces in Vogue, sometimes it was sheer luck that we were doing a shoot, a jewelry shoot, fashion shoot, and somebody sent in a press release about something that just happened to chime with the story that we were working on. Sometimes it was pure luck that it came across our desks at that moment. There were many times that there were fantastic designs and pieces from designers I wanted to support, and somehow they just didn't fit with what we were working on or what the pages that I had been given by the editor to fill. So if you don't get press, it doesn't mean you don't have a good product. It sometimes, as I say, is pure luck. It's good maybe to have your brand aligned with other brands that you feel have a good image, and always good to be relevant and spoken about. But as I said, don't overspend on it. Market your business online. Make your platform very easy to navigate. Make sure you can sell your pieces globally, and place your product with other online platforms and boutiques, which are good ones. And make sure you're sort of linking your products everywhere so people get referred back to your website. And if you're doing your website and doing Instagram, post regularly. And I do think it's quite important now to make it quite personal, so people understand you and your own style and a little about your life. I often think, particularly with fashion or jewelry designers, that people buy into their image a lot. And so I think, you don't have to tell them what you're having for breakfast and get into too much detail, but I think people want a little personal, to feel they know you. Create your own community on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, TikTok. TikTok is important now. A lot of people buying, a lot of people using it. Also, wherever you are, give your sustainability credentials. That's super important to millennials and Gen Z. They want to know what your ethical outlook is, where things are from, what you're doing, how you run your business. It's really important where the rubbish goes from your waste paper bins, almost. I mean, it's that level of detail that people want now. I think the more information you give, the more people trust you. And I think this business does rely on trust. I mean, it's always been the trust of stone dealers saying, what's that stone worth? Oh, it's this. They hand it over. They automatically trust who they're dealing with, that the payment will come through. It's been the modus operandi for this industry for generations. Trust is really important between each other and for the consumer. And I think my last tip is to make what you love. If you love jewellery and you work in it, love what you're making. It's a business of passion. It's very hard work. It's really not easy. Hence, people asking this question. And it's got to feel authentic to you. There's no easy, quick way to do it. It's long hours, hard work. Don't let that put you off, because if you love it, it's a joy. You know, that comes through eventually. And then people you engage with and your clients will feel that and engage with that passion. And remember that as much as you love designing jewellery, if that's what you are in this industry, there are all the other bits that you need to pay attention to, like the thought out plans, like the cash flow, like the sustainability, the social media presence. All that needs time. And remember that a designer ultimately does always become a business person as well. Whether or not they're running the entire business themselves, you do need a level of business knowledge. And my final tip may seem super obvious, but do make things that fit for now. It's got to fit with what's happening in the world, the feeling, the fashion, what's happening on the street, because ultimately people have got to wear it. And I did meet a young designer once, and we had coffee together, and she showed me her designs for fastening cloaks. And they were beautiful, but I said, who wears cloaks? Who Sherlock Holmes? Where is Sherlock Holmes? I mean, who wears cloaks now? I said, that's beautiful, but you've got to adapt it into something that people are going to wear. So have that at the bottom of your ideas, that people need to wear it. So there was another question moving on from that, which sort of slightly linked, which was, what are people buying now? So actually, I think looking at spring-summer 2024 runways, it's a kind of echo of the 1970s, definitely a sort of throwback to that era with maxi dresses, ruffles, oversized sunglasses, that kind of thing. I think if you think that Françoise Hardy died quite recently, and I think Jane Birkin, those kind of French girls, sort of exemplified that boho chic look. We've had layering for some time, but now think longer, looser, more relaxed, mismatched chains, colourful beads, hippie look. You can even go back to the kind of long beads hung with crucifixes, that kind of thing. There were chains, long chains at Chanel, silver medallions at Burberry, gold lariat necklaces at Tom Ford. There were a lot of colourful beads at Ralph Lauren. And think coral and turquoise, those very strong, kind of sunny, vibrant shades. And another reason that I think designers are looking at that is because it's very, very easy to wear, and it's very good for consumers because you can multitask it. One long chain wrapped around the neck, it can wind around the wrist. At Dior, they're making chains that are like slinky belts, so you can always have a long, really long necklace as a belt and then multitask that. It sort of made me think of a belt I bought years ago from Lulu de la Falaise in Paris, Yves Saint Laurent's great muse, and it was slightly more slinky with leather and silver, and sadly I wasn't thinking, and I could have easily worn that as a necklace. I also think that Stephen Webster's Crystal Haze works really well with this look, even though it's not 70s. It's bright colours overlaid with that hazy crystal, which I think really works well with that 70s vibe. Claire Schwann at Boucheron, the artistic director, said that her Serpent Bohème teardrops was really reminiscent of the 70s for her. And she saw the 70s as a happy, idealized place. Is that why we're going back to it? Pre-tech. And that opens up a whole other source of conversation, which we won't have now, because it's not about jewelry. But anyway, think happy, idealized place when you put on your jewelry. Sexy, fun, stack it. And you can hang things on the end of it, little pendants, lockets, birthstones, and wear it with a carefree spirit. High jewels have a completely different look and feel right now to me. Really, they are the opposite. They're very stiff, very high-necked and very formal. They're like sort of stiff collars. And it seems to be 70s in the way that they're being made in parures, matching sets, earrings, collars, rings, very formal. The way it's mixing with what we're wearing lower down the scale is colour. At Louis Vuitton, Francesca Amphitheatrov made a Coeur de Paris, over 50 carats, an orange-pink diamond designed on a diamond necklace. Gucci have a very large rubellite in the centre of a floral bouquet diamond cuff. Pomellato, they weren't huge stones, but there were so many of them, and they were just made this fantastic fuchsia collar using lots of different coloured spinels ranging from pink to fuchsia to scarlet. Really, really stunning. The Treasure House Fair in London, I know Robert Prokop from LA is coming over with an array of stones over 100 carats each, and one of them is a bubble gum pink sapphire of over 100 carats. And I know that there's some other collections coming out in the summer using morganite and kunzite in sizes of 50 to 70 carats. So it's really big pink time. And that's quite unusual because usually the fine jewelry collections are focusing on emeralds, rubies, sapphires. So I thought I'd just mention the colour spectrum of pinks if you're looking for a pink. Very pale, delicate colours, I'm afraid, is a diamond. That's expensive. Or a morganite. If you want that milky quality, affordable milky quality, it's rose quartz or pink opal. Then that sort of pinky lavender, which is lovely as a pink kunzite. The more vibrant go into sapphire, topaz, or reddish pink spinel, and darker rubellite tourmaline. And then, of course, if you are looking for one and buying, how do you buy? Was another thing I was asked. Basically, you have to know the terms, the heated, unheated, oiled, sort of, you have to know what you don't know, which you wouldn't know necessarily as a consumer, but you have to ask. You wouldn't be able to detect an emerald has been oiled. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a heated and a non-heated stone, and that has been going on for years, which is fine. And we have some beautiful colours, but of course they are priced very differently. An unheated stone can be 10 or 20 times as much as a heated one. And it's the same in the cultured pearls, that a cultured pearl will be 10% of a natural one. In fact, somebody wrote in and said that they'd listened to our pearl episode with Vogue fashion editor Jack Borkett and Chrissy Coleman Douglas, a pearl expert. And she then went into Sotheby's and saw the sale of a single strand of natural pearls from Tiffany in the 1920s, which fetched a massive $300,000. So you need to ask where it's from and if it's been treated. You need certification papers. You ask for a second opinion. You can easily have a second opinion. You can look up previous prices online at different auctions to get a price comparison. You can get an indication of market rates, looking at other dealers' sites or auction rooms. The GIA, Gemological Institute of America, is a very reputable certification process, and they grade the quality of the stone and where it's originated from, which is really important because certain countries and regions and mines are renowned for the quality of their gems, and that can add value to your stone. And also another point would be that a certificate should be fairly current because lab technology improves all the time. So you don't want to be referring to something that might be 10 years old. And of course, age and provenance can make a difference too if it's been owned by someone notable. So if there's a possibility that it has, find that out as well. So the next question, we're going off topic of fine jewels. We're going into costume jewellery. Curtis in the US asked me if I'd heard of a designer called Pauline Radar. I hadn't heard of her, but what I found out is that it's rare and collectible. She was working for 2 decades from about 1962. It was a family business. She had showrooms in Forest Hills in New York and Palm Beach in Florida. I've looked at some of the pieces and I think they're made in the best tradition of costume jewellery in New York in the heyday that was in the kind of 30s and 40s when so many of the fine jewellers had emigrated from Europe in the war and landed up working in New York, and they bought all their fine ways of working on fine jewellery and invested it in costume jewellery. It's very detailed, quite witty. She mimicked some Etruscan styles, gold granulations, and I looked at a scarecrow brooch, which was, very charming because it had green glass cabochon face, wearing a crystal-studded jacket. But of course, his sort of empty limbs of straw were made in gold fringe. He really looked like something out of The Wizard of Oz. A cheeky monkey with very detailed ears and whiskers and a great sense of movement, as if he's picked up a faux blue rhinestone gem and is scurrying off with it. Lovely brooches with variegated leaves, two-tone butterflies with wings and rhinestone sparkles on their antennae. She obviously had a great business and made some beautiful pieces. In 2009, her grandson released a limited edition of her work. So the old molds are there, and I think those pieces are just as collectible. I think Curtis is interested in finding out more so he can hold an exhibition. So if anybody knows more about Pauline's life or has pieces or knows where pieces are or any of her molds, get in touch with us and we'll put you on to him, because wouldn't that be great to be involved in an exhibition that he holds in the future on her work? Now, I had a question from Laura. I'm not sure where Laura was. She asked me about the popularity of certain iconic designs at the big brands, the Love Bangle at Cartier, the Alhambra at Van Cleef, the Serpenti at Bulgari, because she said she's very conflicted. On the one hand, she can see that they're strong, iconic designs. They've proven the test of time and they're still popular. But on the other hand, they're everywhere. The market's flooded, and are they still chic? So she wanted to know what I thought about that. And I kind of have to agree with you, Laura. I'm conflicted too. A good design is a good design, and it should stand the test of time, as these pieces have. And then they find new generations that they appeal to. And I think that's the point of jewellery. It should have these other lives and have a sense of longevity. But I agree with you. They are almost too popular, and it is hard to have a sense of individuality. And part of the reason that I love wearing jewellery is, as we know the stories, if jewels could talk. And we talk on their behalf. And if somebody notices you're wearing a piece of jewellery, they ask a question and there's always a story and it begins a conversation. I always say they're conversation pieces, but we kind of know everything about the Love Bangle and the Serpenti, and other people are wearing them. So I agree there's sort of not so much of a story to be had there. And yet they are objects, and maybe what's important is the emotion that we imbue in them as human beings. So they reflect the people and the love that they might have been given with. So maybe that is the story. You also asked me what the brands do when they're copied, because you felt, Laura, that you had seen quite a few copies of these particular designs. Well, all I can tell you is good luck to those people, because the big brands are very litigious. I mean, let's face it, Bernard Arnault is the richest man in the world now. He's overtaken Elon Musk. There is money there to take people to court. And the big brands do. Quite a long time ago, there was a a dealer I knew in London with a very small store down one of the arcades, and he put a strand of pearls in the window and he called it the Coco necklace. Now, the Coco necklace could have been Coco the clown, it could have been Coco his dog, it could have been his daughter. It's a generic name that's used, but Chanel sent him a legal letter very quickly, within about 2 weeks of it being in the window, saying, take that necklace out, rename it. We'll take you to court if you use the name Coco. So they're litigious, and that is how they keep their lid on it. It's probably harder in the leather goods side of their businesses, but certainly in jewellery, they take people to court. So, but certainly in jewellery, they are very litigious. I was also asked what was my favourite part of the last series. And I have to say, we've had so many great and interesting speakers. It's very hard to pick out a moment. But one moment that took me by surprise and made me laugh was when I was in Paris and I was going to interview Michelle Lamy, the jewellery designer, artist, wife of fashion designer Rick Owens. And she welcomed me into her home. And I'd never met her before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. And within a minute, she had made me relax by making me laugh, because when I said, do you prefer wearing necklaces, earrings? What do you like wearing? And she had some sort of loose hanging hoops on. She said, oh, I fucked up my ears. And by wearing heavy earrings for so long. And because it was so unexpected, it made me laugh. And I was there with her because actually years ago, I wrote a story on the weight of heavy earrings for Vogue. And in the course of it, I had my piercing sewn up, had to leave it for a while, and then had it re-pierced. And let me tell you, my earlobes have never been the same since. So I was there with Michelle when she said she'd messed up her ears. I sympathized with her, but it made me laugh. I got asked a question which I find very difficult to answer. Who are the new designers that I've spotted and noticed? I mean, I have to say, I find that the hardest question of all when people come up to me and say, who is your favorite designer? I say, oh my God, today it is. Tomorrow it'll be something different. And that tends to be how I buy jewelry. I like to buy something that I really can't live without now, but I know it's something that I'll wear. And when I stop wearing it, later on, I'll go back to it because it's a design I really like and that you can always wear. It's not a high fashion piece that you're not going to go back to. So who have I spotted recently and what do I think? I think somebody worded the question with, who can we afford? So I think what you have to do is look for silver and gold vermeil, but with an elevated sense of design and execution. Don't go for something that you think is going to fall apart or not look good in a year or two, because I think you may as well get good costume if you're going to do that. Buy good silver. There's a designer called Megan Brown doing quite interesting work. Her family are in the textile industry, and she's using sterling silver and gold and weaving it together for sort of tactile fabric-like pieces. And we actually mentored her. I'm part of a charitable initiative in London called The Leopards, working with Theo Fennell, Solange Azaguri-Partridge, Susan Farmer and Stephen Webster. We mentor young people into the industry. We've worked with a lot of young people coming through the Princess Trust, now the King's Foundation. We exhibited some of their work at the Goldsmiths Hall in London, and Megan was one of the people we exhibited. And I'm very happy and thrilled to say that the King gave a video speech and encouraged people to look at the jewellery over the evening. There's By Pariah, who I like, very affordable, online, gold, a mix of classic and fashion. The Great Frog. There's Jennifer Fisher in New York, who's the classic hoop, and she makes hoops in every size, and there's something for everybody. And I called, in my book coming out in September, I've called the hoop actually the world's first fashion accessory. And it may well be the last, because it just goes on and on and on. Everybody needs a good hoop in their jewellery wardrobe. I love Goossens in Paris. I have mismatched earrings from them, which are coral and rock quartz, which I wear on different ears, which are great. and I love their work. And they worked with Coco Chanel years ago, and they have some fabulous designs. Alighieri in London, she has a great community on Instagram and makes her pieces in bronze. And also look at enamels. Solange Azaguri Partridge, her hot lips just go like hot cakes in every colour, and she changes it each season, and they just remain a great design. I also encourage people to look at goldsmithsfair.co.uk. They have a lot of individual designers. I think if you can, Google local jewellers, try and meet them, try and get invested, working with them to have something individual made for you that reflects your style, and then you feel much more engaged with it, which is fantastic. You feel invested in your piece of jewellery. There's also the Home of Faber guide online, and they have a lot of craftsmen and artisans working in Europe, and that includes jewellers as well. There's also Ruth Tomlinson, whose work I like. She has appeared on our podcast. When we went mudlarking along the Thames, she found garnets and has worked with those, but she often has little pieces of stone and pearls, and she has this wonderful kind of vintage and modern style, and I think they make great engagement rings. Jewellery has the unique ability to transcend times and trends, and if you're going a little bit more elevated and looking to buy stones, I always suggest William Wellstead and Raphael Cano, who work with stones in deceptively simple designs because they're so beautiful that you know you're always going to wear them. And in fact, the makeup expert, Lisa Eldridge, who has a beauty brand, got engaged. I suggested she went to William Wellstead, and she loves her engagement so much. She did a collaboration with him, making gemstones that sort of went along with her colours of makeup. So take a look at that. And thank you very much for listening. I just want to thank everybody for sending in those questions and responding, and for keeping on listening to the podcast. It really is great. And as I say, we're going into season 7, or guns blaring. We won't take much of a break. I'm off to Paris Couture. I'm off to Sardinia to see a new jewellery collection at Alta Moda. I have the book coming out of the podcast, If Jewels Could Talk, in September. So we'll be having book launches in different places and signings. And wherever I am, I'll be doing a podcast. So I will be anxious to bring you back news and voices of people that I think are important that we hear and listen to. Any suggestions, as always, get hold of me. And we're on YouTube, so don't forget that. We're on Instagram at Carol Woolton. And we'll be back with the podcast very soon. And I'm sorry if, excuse my London croaky voice, because there's been what we call the 100-day cough going around London, and I'm on like day 70. So by season 7, I'll be sounding back to normal. So thank you for bearing with me. I also wanted to thank you all that I can give good advice about jewellery, but I just want to reiterate how personal it is for all of us. And this happened to me recently, that when my mother died on Christmas Day, and I posted it on Instagram because it felt weird, no one knew. And quite a lot of you reached out to me and sent me messages, which meant a great deal. And she left her opal engagement ring to my daughter. But when it came into the house, I put it on my finger, and I can't tell you how wrong it looked for me, because I could only imagine it on her finger. And I spent all my time telling people about the hereditary purpose of jewellery and how it's important and how it's passed down and worn by other family members. But how weird that, having given this advice all the time, I know I couldn't do it myself in that instance. So I'm very happy that my daughter will be wearing it. But thank you for that, and thank you for listening and for your support. And see you at season 7. Thank you for listening. Join me again in 3 weeks for the next Jeweled Nugget. Early on in season 7, we've got episodes coming from Milan, Venice, Paris. So subscribe now to the podcast so you don't miss them. See you then. Look forward to it. Bye-bye. If Jewels Could Talk with Carol Woolton is produced by Natasha Cowan, music and editing by Tim Thornton, graphics by Scott Bentley, illustration by Jordi Labanda. You can find our sponsors at fullygemstones.com and me at carolwoolton.com.